On January 29, 2017, Alexander Bissonnette entered a great mosque in Quebec. He entered the mosque armed with a semi-automatic rifle and a pistol. Bissonnette opened fire in the mosque and ended up killing 6 people while injuring 5. Unsurprisingly, this ended up in court, where Alexander Bissonnette pleaded guilty to 6 charges of first-degree murder and 5 lesser charges. His final sentence was life in prison with a chance of parole in 25 years. In Canada, first-degree murders are usually first-degree murders, which is life in prison, are usually served on not on top of each other but at the same time, with a chance of parole being in 25 years. However, the Crown prosecutor for this case asked the judge to apply Section 745.41 of the Criminal Code. This would result in 25 years without parole to be stacked onto each other for every first-degree murder. So instead of him having a chance of parole in 25 years, he would have to wait 150 years for a chance of parole. The defense counsel, unsurprisingly, argued this as an unconstitutional, and the judge agreed. So Bissonnette was charged 5 concurrent charges of life in prison without parole for 25 years, and the 6th charge was life in prison with 15 years without chance of parole, and was considered a consecutive charge. Therefore, the judge offered and ordered life in prison with 40 years of ineligibility. The offender then appealed to the Quebec Court of Appeal. The offender then appealed to the Quebec Court of Appeal, and they found the provision unconstitutional and charged Bissonnette with the original life in prison with ineligibility for 25 years. This case went to the highest level of courts, the Supreme Court of Canada. The Supreme Court is the highest appeals court in Canada, which also deals with the constitutional questions referred to by the federal government. For something to be considered a crime, it has to consist of 2 basic features: mens rea and actus rea. Mens rea is the action of a guilty mind. If the criminal has intent behind the actions, then it would be considered an act of mens rea. Alexander Bissonnette displayed this by intending to go and planning to go into the mosque and firing at the worshippers. Actus rea is the actual behavior of the crime as well as criminal negligence. If the offender knows the crime that it is committing, and he knows the consequences of the crime, that it is considered criminal negligence and can fall under actus rea. In this case, Bissonnette knew that the crime he was committing was obviously life in prison and went ahead with it. So therefore, he would be considered to have criminal negligence, and he would fall under both mens res and actus reus, making the crime he committed a crime. This crime is also an indictable offense. An indictable offense can consist of crimes like murder, armed robbery, sexual assault, and it is usually looked at as a more serious case and is heard in the superior courts, in this case being the Supreme Court of Canada. The news source I discovered was an article written by the Canadian Lawyer magazine by Aidan McNabb. The article discussed the decision of the Supreme Court trying to add sentences on top of each other and trying to extend Bissonnette's ineligibility of parole. Canadian Lawyer magazine interviewed criminal lawyers, and each of them agreed with the court's decision to outlaw the attempt of trying to stack ineligibility to parole sentences. There is obviously bias within this article because they talked to the criminal lawyers about this, and obviously the criminal lawyers are not going to like that the sentences of parole were stacked on each other, because they are representing the offender. So they would like either the sentence to be lower or the chance of parole to be less years. So obviously this is biased because they're essentially just interviewing the opposition on something that would affect their client in a negatively way. So that's the bias within this article. This case is important because not only were the actions of Bissonnette very unthinkable and cruel, but the actions of Bissonnette were also a hate crime. A hate crime towards the Muslim religion and community that needs to be brought towards other citizens' attentions. The discrimination shown towards the Muslim community with these acts could have scared and made Muslim worshippers afraid of attending mosques with a chance of an event like this occurring in the future. So this greatly impacts Canadian society in a very negative way. The reason why I decided to select this case is because I found the decision of the court very interesting. They first attempted, the Crown Prosecutor attempted to stack the sentences of parole on top of each other, so he wouldn't have a chance of parole in 150 years, which isn't really seen. And then they ended up decreasing it to 4 years, with 5 of them being served at once, and then an extra 15 being served on top of the 25. So with a total of 40 years. And then after that, it went to the appeal courts of Quebec, where it was then reduced to 25 years without parole. So I found that pretty interesting, and it made me decide to do my project on this specific case.